Welcome to the Single Mom Glow Up, the podcast where we're spilling all the tea on single motherhood, self care, and dating. I'm Bree, your host and fellow single mom navigating life, love, and everything in between. Wherever you are on your single mom journey, this is the place where you will find real stories, honest advice, and a community that just gets it. So, buckle up if you're driving, and if you're chilling, grab your favorite drink. And if you are like cleaning or something, I'm just honored to be your cleaning vibe. Let's dive in. In today's episode is all about confidence after loss and how to rebuild your self-worth after loss. Loss can come to us in different ways. I know if you've been listening, for me, loss came in two different ways back in 2019, and honestly, this summer actually it came in two different ways. But like those four ways encompassed the three major forms of loss, which is, loss of a relationship, right? Back in 2019, I left my kid's dad. If you want to hear that story, like if you're just finding me here and now, that story is one of the episodes, either episode 1 or episode 2, I believe. I think it's episode 1. And then I lost my best friend to suicide, and that story is all in the previous 2 episodes. And then this summer, it was like a loss, yes, but it was like a chosen loss. Oh gosh, no, there's an extra form of loss that I'm just now realizing. Loss of identity as well, right? But that actually comes with losing a partner. That can also come with losing someone to like actual death. And then it can come with learning something new about yourself that's been true all along, right? So for me, that's been learning that I'm autistic and looking back and realizing, oh, I wasn't depressed in high school. That wasn't the thing that was making it so that when I came home, I would just collapse on the floor and like nap, or not even just nap, but just be so still and not be able to do anything. That wasn't depression. That was autistic burnout from masking all day, right? That whole identity, like the loss of the identity of myself as not being autistic, but I've also gained anyway, that's a loss. And then again, this summer, I experienced the loss of my partner, my most recent partner, who's now my ex. Having experienced the losses that I have, and that's not even all the losses that I've experienced, I know a thing or two about rebuilding your self-worth afterwards, right? I know a thing or two about how it feels to have something unexpectedly snatched away from you. I know what it feels like to have something expectedly snatched away from you. I know what it feels like to have to make the hard choice on your own to walk away or to lose something or to let go of something, even when you don't want to, but you know that it's right for you. You may be thinking, okay, how do these things affect your self-worth? Whether you're dealing with a divorce or a called off engagement or a breakup, or whether you're dealing with death, whether you're dealing with a major life change, that all can affect your self-worth if you have attached your self-worth to these things, right? If you're going through a divorce or a breakup, many of us as women are taught throughout our lives to attach our worth to whether or not we are in a relationship. So when that relationship ends, especially something like a marriage where you took all the steps to be committed, there's an extra layer of worth and therefore an extra layer of shame when that ends, given to us by society, not necessarily, it may not necessarily be how you look at it or how you feel. But because of that, now that you've lost the thing that your worth was attached to, your worth takes a hit, right? Same thing, or it's not exactly the same with the death, but it can be similar. Like, I lost my friend to suicide back in 2019, and I quickly, within like 2 months, fell into a pit of despair so deep that I also started to want to end my own life. The hard pill to swallow was that my friend, like it was just too much all at once. right? I just had a baby. I was supposed to get married that year and didn't, thank goodness now. But back then it didn't feel like a thank goodness. And I was also experiencing like mini losses in the form of dating way too soon and, dealing with ghosting and stuff like that. And then here goes my rock, my best friend, and she just like was gone. One day she was here, one day she was gone. And I was just like, I really just must not mean anything to God. Like, why is all of this happening? Is this what I deserve? This must be what I deserve. I must have done something wrong, right? And just spiraling there. So that was a hit to my confidence, a hit to my self worth. And then major life changes, right? Like, I don't know if I've talked about this in previous episodes, but I will keep it kind of short because I've talked about it on social media extensively. I've spent the last almost 10 years, or it's been longer than 10 years, but I had spent 10 years studying psychology, learning how to be a psychologist at first, but then I switched over to counseling and I've been practicing counseling, and that was the thing that I was supposed to do. And early summer, or I guess it was technically still spring. Yeah, so this spring, I came face to face, and I've been having these little moments of just like, is this right for me? Maybe I just need a different lane within counseling. But yeah, I came face to face with, no, this isn't for me, because I had the perfect job and I still felt the same and I still was experiencing extreme burnout. And having to make that decision after being honest with myself that I needed to walk away for my own health, that was a hit to my self worth, because it's like, sure, I know what isn't for me, but what is for me? I don't know. I don't know, but I know that that's not for me, right? Some common struggles with um, understanding your confidence after loss and what might happen to your confidence and your self worth after loss. You might start to feel inadequate, right? You might start second guessing yourself, thinking, oh, I did a lot of second guessing this summer. In fact, I wrote in my secrets journal. Here it is. I have done nothing all summer but wait for myself to be myself again. I have done nothing all summer but wait for myself to be myself again. And that's what I did this summer after, having to walk away from the job and then feeling my relationship not starting to decline, but like the decline getting to a point of like, a point of no return, right? And then something else that, I guess I have experienced this, but I tend to move through this relatively quickly. I think it's the autism. But fearing judgment, especially, I know that this is big for divorce. You know what? I did actually experience this when my friend died in ninth grade, how I had trouble letting go and everyone else seemed to move on, but like I would still cry about it all the time. And I didn't want people to know that that was going on. So fearing judgment on how you are handling the loss can also bring your confidence down. If you're thinking things like, I shouldn't be feeling this way anymore, I should have moved on by now, why am I like this, what is wrong with me, I must have done something to deserve this, all those things, right? But what loss really is, beyond it, it is just, it's a human experience. First of all, loss is a human experience, period. You don't have to make meaning out of it if you don't want to make meaning out of it. But if you're like me, you like to make meaning out of things, so I'm going to keep talking about that. It doesn't define your worth. Loss is over here and your worth is all the way over here. Can you see that? Yes. Loss, your worth. They're not here. They're not all together. They're not commingling. Okay? Loss is here and your worth is all the way over here. And if you're just listening, my hands are separated. I'm sure you can envision that, right? They're not connected. After having had the experiences that I had in 2019, right? I often joke, but it's also very much the truth, that 2019 was the worst year of my life. When COVID came, it was a blessing, because not a overarching blessing, because that was a scary time and a sad time. But also, it was nowhere near as tough for me as 2019 was. And having gone through those trials and tribulations with loss, because of loss, this past summer 2024, was not as pungent, did not knock me on my arse as much as it probably would have had I never experienced 2019. So I had all these tools in my tool belt, from dealing with the worst to then use on the painful, but not the worst, right? And so it is an opportunity for growth. And whether you are experiencing your version of my 2019, where you're like in the motherfucking trenches, or whether you are, you've been through your trenches, but you just need a reminder. Or maybe you done forgot what your tools were, or maybe you made it through somehow. You have no idea how you made it through because you didn't keep track of it. You just did it. Then stay here with me and I will give you what I have used. And I guess this is where maybe my counseling background, my 10 years of psychology and counseling experience isn't completely for nothing, even though I'm leaving it behind, because I can still use those things that I learned from that to help you, darling. You. How delightful is that? Okay, that just gave me a little joy, a little twinkle, a little sparkle. Glimmer, that's the word. Okay, so here are my steps to rebuild confidence. Journaling. Journaling. I have so many journals. This is my current journal. I journal a lot. Oh, don't. That's just olive oil, okay? Don't. It's well loved, okay? I journal a lot. I know some people have had their journals read by, it's usually a mother. Yeah, all the stories that I've heard is it's been a mother reading someone's journal, and now they just don't do journals. Okay, if you just don't do journals, I recommend Notes app on your phone. You can talk into the abyss. If that doesn't feel too weird, you can literally, you can do video journaling. You don't even have to watch it. You don't even have to keep it. You can just delete it afterwards, but you got the words out. And that's the thing about journaling. That's why it works, because when things are just rolling around in your mind, you may not realize how much is in there and how scrambled it is. But when you have to write it down, or when you have to choose what words to say, then all of a sudden now you have to pick between the things. And what we experience while journaling is, okay, what words am I going to choose? Right. And so when you put them on paper, you can see back how you are viewing yourself, how you are viewing your experiences, how you are viewing whatever it is you're journaling about. And sometimes that can be pretty shocking, right? For me, it was pretty shocking, right? Or you can also there's like a filtering aspect to it, where the first word that comes to mind, you're like, no, that's not right. Right. But that word may have been bouncing around in your head. It's a reflection, right? That's also why therapy can help, because I don't know, those of you who've been to therapy, you probably experienced this, but sometimes you just go to therapy and you have to talk and you have to choose what words to say. And that is when it clicks for you. It didn't click for you when you were thinking or ruminating or spiraling about it for the week before, right? Or immediately after it happened, nothing clicked for you. But then when you have to go and choose the words to describe the experience to someone and hear them outside of your mind, outside of between your ears, all of a sudden you're seeing yourself. So I highly recommend journaling, because if you're dealing with a loss of confidence and a loss of self-worth, that will come through in your journaling. And you can correct it with your journaling. Okay. Some prompts you may want to consider. Grab a pen, grab a paper, or, maybe write down what part, like however long this is in the recording, so that you can come back when you do journal, if you do choose to journal, and do these prompts. So the first one is, what am I proud of? These are the more positive ones, okay? What am I proud of today, no matter how small? right? So, oh, I should have said this first. I recommend doing like a brain dump. And the way that I used to start my brain dumps when I was going through all of this is I would address them to my friend who died, right? So if there's someone special to you who's on the other side, or it could be someone who's still here, you just don't have to send it to them if you don't want to. But sometimes it helps to start a journaling thing by making it seem like you're talking to someone else. It could be dear future self, it could be dear past self, anything like that. I'm I'm changing gears now. A mindset shift that you can potentially start to make, right? To go from the lower confidence, the low self worth after loss to much more improved self worth, higher confidence, right? Instead of thinking, why did this happen to me? Which, oh my gosh. Speaking of journaling, I want to say like 50 to 70% of my journals are full, not more recently, 50% timeline wise, right? So all the journals I wrote from 2019 to now, the first 50 to 70% is very much like, why did this happen to me? But now it is in the mindset shift of what can I learn from this? So I'll still, feel my feelings, write out my feelings, write out what I think about my feelings and all that stuff with the mindset of what can I learn from this? Like, it's happened, right? And I can sit here and wonder why. But when existential stuff happens, who are you as a human? Like, just a regular ass human, just a regular ass meat suit. To, like, what can you do to find out why? You can sit there and you can dissect every little thought, every little word, every little action that in many of our cases, right? Like, this might hit. Prepare yourself, buckle up, this might hit. For every little thing that our kid's dad does, we can sit there and be like, why? Why does he lie? Why does he say that he's going to do something and then literally either does the opposite or doesn't do it at all? Why does he pop up unprovoked to lie? Why does he pretend to like me in December and early January and then ghost me for the rest of the year? He's after your taxes. That's an obvious why, right? But we don't have to sit here after your tax return specifically. We don't have to sit here and wonder why this and why that and all of that. We might, right? But that figuring out why doesn't change that what happened happened. Figuring out why, figuring out the intention doesn't matter as much as mitigating the impact. Dang. That was kind of fire. Figuring out the intention, especially if it is draining you to figure out what the intention was and it's not a straightforward, hey, why did you do this? And getting a straightforward answer. I think it's okay to seek things when they don't drain you, right? But if you are obsessing over the why, right? I did that when my friend died too. I was like, why on earth would she do this? And I experienced so much anger that she didn't even leave me a note or something to know why. But that doesn't matter. It's happened. She's gone. I'm never going to get that answer. So I could sit here and play detective and try to figure it out and potentially still be wrong. Or I can look at the impact, right? I can look at my grief. I can look at my sadness. I can look at the trauma of it all. I can look at the impact that she had on my life when she was here. I can see how she wanted me to live, not like in a controlling way, but like knowing who she was and thinking of if I came to her with X, Y, and Z going on in my life, what kind of advice would she give, right? I can learn from the impact. I can mitigate the impact, right? Like I've been doing a lot of somatic work because my body held on to the grief of losing her. And figuring out why isn't going to delete the trauma from my body. Same thing with our kids' dads, right? Like we can sit there and try to figure out why. Oh, he's like this because X, Y, and Z, and da 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 da. And you probably do. You probably know exactly why he is the way that he is, but you're still experiencing low self-worth, low confidence, trouble trusting yourself, trouble trusting others, all these things that single moms go through. You're probably still experiencing that because you have not shifted into the mindset of what can I learn from this? You have to shift to the mindset of what can I learn from this to start to take your power back and be able to feel confident again. Doesn't matter why he did it, he fucking did it. And you're there to pick up the pieces. So instead of figuring out why he did it, you got to pick up those pieces. It sucks. It's not your responsibility to pick up the pieces, but you care. You're the one who's stayed, and you don't want it to impact you negatively. You don't want it to impact your kids negatively. That's not to say that you can protect them from him always if he's still involved, right? But you can do what you can to learn from the experience, mitigate further harm, mitigate the harm that has happened. I really like that word today, huh? Mitigate. And learn from it. Silencing your inner critic. Every single one of us has an inner critic that is like our worst enemy. She sits there, or I don't want to gender your inner critic. It could be another voice, but I'll just speak of mine, and you switch the pronouns around if you want. She sits there, and she's learned to be harsh because that's how society was on us. Sometimes it's not even just society. Sometimes the harshness comes from a specific person, whether that's a parent, whether that's a teacher, whether that's a friend, a sibling, whatever. And your inner critic just sits there your whole life and listens and absorbs all of that. And to keep you safe, because that's what our parts do. They don't necessarily keep us happy. They don't necessarily keep us whimsical and joyful and in our feminine energy and flowing. They don't do that unless we train them to. They keep us safe, right? And so your inner critic is there to keep you safe, but sometimes keeping you safe, especially if this is what you learned growing up, sometimes keeping you safe is saying negative things to you to shut you down so that you don't do something dangerous, right? Where I'm autistic, so this has happened my entire life, where if you were to say something a certain way or to speak your mind, right, and what you're saying isn't wrong, but it's offensive to the person that you're saying it about, but it's not objectively offensive, right? Like, I'm not saying go around and, like, I don't know, say something racist or bigoted or anything like that is offensive. But I'm saying something like, I had a friend who was going through something, and she um I'm thinking of my friend who listens to the podcast, and she is going to know exactly who I'm talking about. So she was going through a breakup, and she was going through a lot, and it was really tough to see her going through what she was going through. And then she was rebounding with this guy, and I'm going to leave too many details out of it, but what it came down to was the way that she started talking about this guy who was supposedly her friend first and that she cared about a lot. She started sounding like a fuckboy. And so naturally, I was like, you sound like a fuckboy. And if someone were talking to you, I mean, talking about you to me the way that you are talking about him to us, I'd be pissed. And she didn't like that, right? So my inner critic, now back, that was not that long ago, and I've done a lot of work, right? My inner critic for most of my life, after a few people have told me, you can't say things like that. You can't say that. Your mouth is going to get you in trouble. Stuff like that. After a few years, no, after years and years of that, my inner critic would do that. Like, I stopped saying stuff like that in, like, late teenage, early adulthood. And the only times I would say stuff like that, bad things would happen anyway. And I was like, all right, like, we're just not going to speak. We're only going to say nice things always. And we're not going to say truthful things ever. But I also don't like to lie. So I didn't lie either. I just didn't speak much. Or I would just talk about things I didn't care about or didn't. Anyway, that inner critic was there to prevent me from losing people, losing friendships, which actually is a survival thing. Like, that is an evolutionary, like, we need people to survive. We need community to survive. Humans are not creatures that thrive on our own. We thrive in community. And so that is a basic human need, especially as a baby, but we're not going to get into all of that. So to help silence the inner critic, this is what I did. First, I internalized an imaginary future version of myself, Like I took the time to envision who I wanted to be, and I envisioned that version of myself speaking to me. She was older, she was wiser, she was finer. She and she would essentially reach back into the past and lift me up. Gosh, am I her now? I'm her. That helps. You can do just that, right? You can go straight to that. Sometimes that's not recommended, not recommended, but usually people say think of, a role model, or think of someone who has spoken to you in a way that you want to, that has really lifted you up and such like that. I didn't have that. I didn't have that. So I had to make it up, right? And it's okay to make it up. I just want to sit here and say, if you do not have that, it's okay to make it up. Okay? Or you can borrow me. You can borrow that future version of myself, right? But it's more powerful, honestly, if it's coming from you. But if you need to borrow me, like, yes. I mean, I'm here for a reason, right? So do that. Or if you have someone in your life, like I have someone's in my life now who, if I had met them back then, they would have been the automatic choice, but I hadn't met them yet, right? So that's how you silence your inner critic. And then I'm a little bit iffy on this one, so I'm gonna be quick. I'm gonna be curt. Affirmations. So affirmations are cool if you're receptive to them. Like if affirmations work for you, then they work for you, and that's great. Use them. Okay, but before we get into the good stuff, you must hear about my free Discord server, the Single Mom Sanctuary. You remember AIM? Discord is like that, and the Single Mom Sanctuary is a curated chat room full of single moms like you. No ads, no overstimulating, brain rotting, doom scrolling content where every 2 seconds someone's trying to sell you something. Okay? Just actual virtual connection with a community of single moms. Make it even better and join us. The link is in the description. So I will see you there. All right, back to the good stuff. Affirmations for me feel like self gaslighting, and they kind of have the opposite effect. I just feel silly, right? And so I'm going to drop something that I think might help. I don't know if this is, I have to look into this. I don't know if this is the tism for me, but affirmations just don't work. And I've even done there's like a scaffolding that you can do with affirmations where, like, the examples I have here are I am enough as I am, I deserve joy and peace. It's like, those are a bit smaller. Those might actually resonate if you feel that way, right? But if I didn't feel that way and I needed to scaffold because this affirmation felt too big for me to accept, then you can say something like, I allow myself to feel ready to deserve joy and peace, right? So you're not necessarily saying I deserve joy and peace, but you're saying I'm open to the idea of deserving joy and peace, right? That's an affirmation too. But if that doesn't work, and like I said, that did not work for me. Now I can say these things and they feel true, right? But that's because of the other work that I did. Then don't pressure yourself to use affirmations. Okay? If you're feeling like they're having the opposite effect and the scaffolding doesn't work, don't force yourself to use them. Like that'll just set you back, okay? But if they, like I said, if they work, good for you. And I mean that genuinely. Good for you. Use them. Use what works. Okay? All right. So, once you get these things down, it's time to start building momentum. It's time to start, well, you can find support while you're doing this, but if you're like me, it was like oh gosh, I have to wrap myself up. I was in the trenches, y'all. I've come so far. Okay. So, building momentum and finding support, especially as a single mom, right? If you're dealing with low confidence, if you're fresh out of a loss, fresh out of a breakup, fresh out of a career loss, or whatever it may be, you're going to need that support system. And if you're also like me and like many single moms, asking for help sucks. It does not feel good to ask for help. It does not feel good to admit that you need help, when in reality, anyone else in your shoes would need help. When in reality, this isn't true for everyone's co-parent, or, you know, if you're not co-parenting, if they're just like full-blown deadbeat, if they were the ones with the level of responsibility that you have taken on, their support system would be their mom. It would be the women in their life, and they would be supporting them. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine for them to get support, but it's not fine for us. No, absolutely not. It takes a village. And that applies to everyone. That applies to every single parent. If you need a village, if you want a village, yes, basically is what I'm trying to say. Like, go get it, go find it. May it find you, honestly. Anyway, support systems can look very different. If I'm super blessed. I'm not even going to sit here and pretend I'm not. I am sitting right now in what used to, this actually was not always a bedroom, but it's my bedroom now. In the home that I grew up in, that my parents purchased, that they are still together and still living in. And I have their help. I have my brother's help. We all live together. My two kids, they go to an amazing school. Like, I'm blessed. We're blessed, right? I could sit there and be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to ask for support. And I could go take a 70 to 90K, potentially more, counseling job somewhere and work myself into the ground or into the hospital to be able to say that I do it all by myself. But that's not the life that I want to live. So I say all that. I'm giving you my version of us words, my version of a support system. This is what my support system looks like, right? Yours can look very different. I know of other single moms. I think Anna talked about it on our episode, it was either episode 2 or episode 3, potentially 4, how she had to move away from her family because living with her family was so unhealthy for her, and she wants to be the best mother that she can be. So she moved to a completely different state, and she has the support of her chosen family that she has built over the time that she's been there. It's absolutely beautiful. You can do that too, right? If your family isn't supportive, or you just, for whatever reason, don't want to go there, there are other options, right? There are online communities. I'm building my own online community for single moms. And sure, it's not necessarily someone being like, hey, let me take like, I'm literally able to record right now because my mom and my brother have taken the kids to church. And I anticipate that on Monday and Tuesday of this week, when they're supposed to be in school, there's going to be a snowstorm and they're going to be home. And so I planned on recording then, but I get the feeling that I'm going to miss at least a day or two of recording. So I'm recording now, right? But I can do that because I have that support. And so online communities don't necessarily give that kind of support of like, well, let me take the kids. Here's, some cash. All the things that people can physically do in person, right? The online community can provide a space for you to bounce off of. It can provide other perspectives, other things that I haven't said here. It can provide friendship. It can help people pour into your emotional cup. They may not be pouring into your physical cup, your financial cup, or anything like that, but they can pour into your spiritual cup. They can pour into your community cup. They can pour into you in different ways, right? You don't even have to say anything. You can just come see that there's a community of other people like you. That alone can be so grounding and helpful. Okay? Again, building momentum. Set simple, achievable goals, right? Achievable goals. Pick one small goal. I was going to say pick one small goal to build momentum, which, if you are in the trenches, yes, pick one small goal to build momentum. One of my goals, I think I've shared this before, was to literally like drink a full glass of water. It was that bad. Okay. I needed to just drink water. Not even the 8 cups that's recommended. One glass of water. That was it. That was my small goal. And some days I didn't reach it. Okay. So if you are in the trenches, just pick one small goal. But if you do have, you've got a little bit to work with. You need a mindset shift. You can pick a few, right? Don't pick too many. And what that means is going to be different for different people, depending on your capacity, depending on, your mind's processing and stuff like that, right? But like right now, I have goals for meditation. I have goals for yoga. I have goals for sleep. Sleep's a big one. If you're going to start somewhere, start with sleep. Start with those kinds of things. Make sure that your foundation is set, but also don't go completely changing the soil when you're just planting a seed. You know what I mean? And then be patient with yourself. Setbacks are part of the journey. It is not going to be a linear path. Accept that now, recognize that, buckle up, and little by little give yourself the life you deserve, and give yourself, not even the life you deserve, give yourself the love that you deserve. And life is going to give you whatever life is going to give you, but give yourself the love that you deserve, and then watch life respond. Yes. Yes. I'm going to leave you with that. If you resonated with anything shared today, join us in the Single Mom Sanctuary Discord server and immerse yourself in our amazing community of single moms. The link is in the description, and make sure to hit that follow button. Subscribe if you're watching me on YouTube so you do not miss future episodes where we'll dive even deeper into navigating single motherhood and glowing up in every area of life. See you in the next episode.